This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to the AIPIS show for accredited income property investment specialists and those who aspire to be. If you're a real estate, mortgage, or financial professional, this is the place for you. We'll explore innovative investment analysis, sales, marketing, and income-generating strategies for the most historically proven wealth creator, income property. Learn from the experts as they show you how to build a better business and a better life.
It's my pleasure to welcome a client case study. I love it when we do case studies and actually hear the good, the bad, and the ugly from our clients. Today will be one of those. Many of you have said you really enjoy the case study stories. Today we have an actor from New York City, and that is Sean Carroll. He and his wife Tanya live in New York City, and Tanya was at the Meet the Masters event with her mother. Sean couldn't make it to the last one, but it's great to have him here to talk about his experience. We're going to talk about property management issues, how to not die by the death of 1,000 cuts, which is what can happen if you don't keep an eye on things, and just how he got interested in real estate and all the rest. Sean, welcome. How are you?
Doing great, Jason. Coming to you from sunny, tax-free Florida for the next couple months here, as I have an acting contract in Florida. And every time I spend a few days here, I just hear your voice in my head, thinking about how much taxes I could be saving if I moved here.
Yeah. Now, is it necessary for your career or Tanya's career to live in New York City, or why do you live there?
This is a daily discussion that she and I have.
Daily, wow.
I love New York City. We both love New York City. We love the vibe of it and the energy of it. And as an actor, there's a lot of training opportunities and casting for theater. I mean, it's the epicenter for theater, definitely in the United States. But what I found is it's a lot of fun for me, too, to go out of town and book jobs in regional professional theaters across the country. So we're talking about it. We may do a hybrid approach where we start spending more time in places like Florida and, maybe eventually set up shop here. And sometimes I think it would be cheaper to fly back and forth between Florida and New York than it would be to rent in New York City.
And pay the tax bill in New York City.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's for sure. So what kind of actor are you?
My focus is primarily musical theater. My college degree is in voice performance, so I've been a singer, for going on 30 years now. Always been interested in theater. I went into teaching for a while and then got into real estate. We'll talk more about that, but I really love the theater. I love the live aspect of it. I love the things I learn about myself through the process. And so I typically will get booked for a run of about 30 to 40 shows at a regional theater near you, and we'll rehearse for a month, put the show up for 30 performances, and all that while I continue to audition, looking for the next opportunity. If that opportunity is in New York City, great, and if it's not, I go where the work is because I'm passionate about it. And one of the reasons I like real estate does provide an additional income source for me to be able to do that and not necessarily have to stay in one place, to earn that.
Right, good stuff. And what does Tanya do?
Tanya works in human resources. She works for a media company in New York, and she's had a few careers as well. But I'm really proud of the work that she's done when we moved to New York City. She changed careers, wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. We kind of just decided, let's try this move, and she's built quite a nice career for herself as well. But I think, like me, she's always been interested in this, the wealth creation, more passive income approaches, diversifying. I think she's craving a little more location independence as well. So it's weighing that income stream that she has with her W-2 job is also helping us qualify for mortgages. So that helps.
Yeah. Well, keep that W-2 job to get all those mortgages. It's pretty handy for that reason. So keep it for a while at least. So what got you interested in income property? I mean, you've alluded to it, but I just want to have you share for the listeners, Sean, your evolution. And was it you first or your wife first or kind of both of you together that got interested in this topic?
Yeah, so how it started was when I was a school teacher and I was directing a choir in a public school in New Jersey. I had a friend of mine who was also a public school teacher, and he was a realtor part-time. And this was right around when the real estate boom was crazy, hot, like 2003, 2004. And he was, selling a couple houses in the summer, and he said, hey, you should get your license. So I did. And I made a sale right away and thought I was hot stuff. And I really I loved everything about real estate. I loved the wealth creation component. I loved looking at houses. I loved seeing what I could do with houses. And I certainly loved the money I could make at the time. Actually, to back up even further, when I was 17 years old, while I was in high school, I purchased, with my dad's credit card, unbeknownst to him, I purchased the Carlton Sheets No Money Down course.
A lot of people bought that.
Yeah. And I remember reading about this, thinking like, I don't know. I mean, a lot of those techniques may not work today, but at the time I remember reading just his philosophy and going, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, right.
This idea of having a tenant pay down a mortgage and build your wealth. So that's where the seed was planted.
Right.
I got into sales in 2004 and started buying some speculative investments, bought some properties here in Florida based on, well, they'll go up. And of course, they did go up until they didn't.
Right.
And we lost everything.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Wow.
We got crushed.
Yeah. You were in that crazy, the Florida market, and we wouldn't do it back in that point. Remember, I started doing the nationwide investing thing and teaching it. I was just doing it at the same time I was teaching it, to my clients. Obviously I had a long background in real estate, so I had a long history as an investor before that, but I wasn't doing it nationwide. And I remember back in 2004 thinking that these areas of Florida where all of the speculation and the massive amount of construction was going on, that was just a bubble. I could just see it. Now, we did do a little business in the Panhandle, and I still own those properties there, actually, in the Panhandle of Florida. And, we helped a lot of clients invest in those much more conservative areas like Pensacola. That wasn't part of the nuttiness that was going on. Yeah, I just knew that had to be just crazy. The stories, just so the listeners have some context, and Sean, feel free to add to this, during the boom time were that, like, contractors were signing people up and saying, look, I'll build a house for you. The people were buying the properties. They never went to the areas. They never saw them. There was really like no employment center in a lot of these areas. And then the contractors would take the money and walk off the job because they would get a more lucrative offer to build another house. That's how nutty it was. And the same thing happened in another area. A lot of times the best decisions you make are the things you don't do. Sure. Another area I'll tell you that we did not do was the oil-rich areas up in North Dakota. Exactly the same thing was going on where people were like, they were building so fast during that boom time. And that was later than the real estate boom. That was after that. Those weren't at the same time necessarily. The contractors would just walk off the job. Like, people would literally go to construction sites and say, look, if you come over and work on this property, I'll pay you double. That's how hard it was. So there were all these like unfinished properties, and it was just a mess. Now, I don't know that that's your story at all, but I just wanted to share that.
The sentiment was the same about like, it was just that frenzy is the best way I can describe it. That fear of missing out, that frenzy of
FOMO.
Yeah. And so basically our story was that we had a couple of condos and I made money on the first two. I know. Listen, when we found you and your podcast, it was like, okay, this is what we should have done the first time. It's like the properties make sense the day you buy them versus on what I think I might make, if I hold on to them. And so we made a couple $100,000, and then I bought a property sight unseen in Daytona Beach, Florida for $500,000, Jason.
Wow. Oh my God.
We closed on it October 1st, 2005. And my thinking, along with everybody else's that I was partnering with at the time, was like, once we see signs that the market's cooling off, we can start unloading some of these assets. And of course, we never had a cool off period. It just crashed. Yeah. And so I couldn't sell. We had to restructure, multi six figures in debt. And so we couldn't do anything with real estate until about 2013 was when all of that finally cleared for us. And we paid back hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right. And by the way, folks, the next time there will be another cycle, it probably won't be this severe because this was a 1 in 70 years type of cycle that we had, the Great Recession, right? Just the second worst thing after the Great Depression starting in 1929. But there will be cycles. And, there may be a time, again, when millions of people make a decision to walk away and just do a strategic default. And The one thing looking back on the Great Recession, I look back and I saw the people that, made the decision to walk away, the people that did loan mods and workouts and that kind of stuff. I think the right decision, kind of hearing all the stories that I've heard from people and interviewing all these, strategic default advisors that I interviewed during the Great Recession, the people that fared best, if they did it, right? It's obviously best to get a loan modification. And, millions of people did that too. But the people that fared best were the ones that did it early, walked early, because the credit contraction was so big that nobody could get credit. It didn't matter how good your score was, and just let that clear. And then by the time the market starts recovering, your credit will be clean and, you can do it again, right? So
that's pretty much our story. I mean, we had a lot of credit card debt as well. At the time, I was using, because these properties didn't cash flow, of course, I was, and the tenants stopped paying, I was using cash advance credit cards to pay the mortgage, and it just got out of control.
You're killing me. Wow.
This was, and a lot of this is what has made me such I think a savvy investor now, is like that pain, like that tuition. I will never forget that feeling. Yeah. And we were able, we had to take our medicine. We finished all the payoffs and our credit has recovered and we've been able to buy property again. Yeah. And, but I'm not going to say I won't make any more mistakes, but I tell you, I won't make those mistakes.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So for all of you listening who might be in the world of cryptocurrencies and you've refinanced your properties to buy Bitcoin or whatever, or Ethereum.
Is that happening, Jason? People are refining their houses to buy Bitcoin?
Oh my God, yeah. And they're getting credit card advances to buy it. They're buying Bitcoin and other cryptos on credit cards. And this is a bubble. I'm telling you folks, it depends where you get in, where you get out, or where you're pushed out, but history repeats itself. Yeah. It just goes by a different name each time, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I never lost my passion for real estate. I did build up a successful sales business for several years during the recession. What helped us pay off a lot of that debt was I got really good at negotiating short sales.
Right. And you were a realtor for a time, right, in New Jersey,
yes,
I think?
Yes, from 2004 till 2011 when we moved to the city. Uh-huh. And I was one of the top agents in my area. I was a RE/MAX agent. And where I specialized was finding people who were in trouble and helping them. And I think I was able to relate to them in a way that a lot of agents weren't, because it was very fresh in my mind where they were.
Sure.
New Jersey, of course, wasn't as bad as Florida in terms of the speculation, but people still lost money on their homes and they weren't putting anything down. So I was selling a lot of properties to people who had employments that just didn't make any kind of down payment. So even a 10% adjustment in the price, they were in a jam, and then their mortgages were adjusting. So I was helping those people short sale and sell. I'm grateful that I learned how to do that, because that's really the only thing that enabled us to pay off a lot of the debt that we had through our restructuring. Yeah. I was selling a lot of property. And and then in 2013, we got back in the game and bought our first rental property through your network. So
okay. So you discovered my podcast. When did you start listening to it?
Late 2013. I found you were interviewed on someone else's podcast. It was a flipper, I believe, and you were talking about the benefits of buy and hold. And it was the first time I had heard somebody say the sentence, make sure that the property, makes sense the day you buy it.
Right.
I had never heard it described that way before. And so my wife and I were drawn to you because we liked the idea of putting money down, qualifying, making sure we can cover the mortgage, and have reserves. Like you were talking a language that was very appealing based on what we had gone through before.
Right.
Because my wife was very hesitant to get back into investing because, well, we did it pretty stupidly before, to be honest. Yeah. And so she said, I like this guy. This sounds reasonable. This makes sense. And so we listened for about a year, and then we bought our first property in 2015. We bought 2 within the first couple of months. And we've had some challenges with those, but we'll get into that.
Yeah. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly here. The first thing I want to say is, obviously my approach is very conservative. I mean, listen, I've done the speculative thing. I did it for many years. I'm just older now, and I just don't want to have to watch things as closely. I don't want to fill my mental energy with trading assets. I just want to keep them and have them give me yield. If you can just get to the point where you're producing X amount of cash flow, everything else is gravy, right? That's it. And the other thing is that, these properties, they have what I like to call self-liquidating debt. The tenant pays off the loan, they pay for the loan every month, and then inflation-induced debt destruction comes along and gives you a huge bonus as well. Even if inflation is moderate, on $1 million worth of debt, you're getting a free $20,000 per year if we only have 2% inflation. And, it's almost always more than 2% in real terms. But, that's just by the official rates. So it's pretty great. Did you come to an event? Did you come to any of our seminars or conferences back then? Or was like Meet the Masters the first for your wife, or what?
We did not attend anything before we purchased. I got in touch. I think I submitted an inquiry on your website and got connected with Sarah. And what actually happened was my wife and I flew to one of the markets that you were recommending in Birmingham at the time. And we met the provider there and drove the neighborhoods, went and looked at some rehabs, because I told myself, at least initially, I was never going to buy a property sight unseen again. Of course, that's changed now. But so we flew down there.
And I think the change is never buy a speculative property sight unseen.
Right.
You can buy good conservative property sight unseen all day long. I mean,
absolutely.
The vast majority of our clients never look at the properties. And I still, after 12 years, have properties I've never seen, and they're fine. But if you're buying in a speculative frenzy and you're buying something that doesn't make sense, you probably better go see it to see what the big selling points are. Or maybe you just shouldn't buy it at all. Yeah.
We've since gone to, so I was at Meet the Masters last year, was the first event of yours. And then my wife and I came to your Oklahoma City JHU Live and Property Tour, and that was fun. We're definitely getting more connected to the network, and it's actually been a big help, meeting some of your other clients, just to remind us that, we're not on an island. There's other people doing this. But we went and we visited Birmingham, and then we actually, my mom, my wife, and I all went to Memphis together because my mom was looking to get into some property. And so we met some providers there. And now once we've met the providers, I did the same in Jackson, Mississippi. My personal philosophy, and this works for us, it doesn't have to be, it may change in the future, is we like to at least go to the market once. And then once we've been there, we don't need to go again if we're going to buy something else. Like that's kind of been our model so far. Once I trust the provider, and if somebody says, "Oh, this is in this zip code," I go, "Oh yeah, I remember that one," and I can just pull the trigger on it.
Sure. So and if someone listening doesn't want to do that, one shortcut to that is just come to one of our live events, our conferences or seminars, and many times we have the local market specialist come to that event. So even if you're not in the market, at least you get to meet the team. That'll sort of solidify a relationship. So I would do that for sure if you can.
Especially the property management team. I had no idea, Jason, like how important that was going to be.
Totally.
Until we got into it.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I know that you have definitely had some problems. Folks, I got to tell you, consider self-management. Self-management. But even if you don't self-manage, there are a few things you can do. So you got to watch this stuff. You got to be an astute investor, okay? And you don't just take people's word for it on appliances, repair items, whatever. I know you have an example like this, Sean. I got an example to share too, but you said that a property manager recently told you something would cost $1,000 and you got it for $450. And what did you do? Yeah. What happened? Tell us about that.
So it's happened twice in the last 3 weeks, Jason, with the same property.
We're doing a timely show here. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one, just I'll run through them quickly. The first one was, it was a repair item, and I've actually switched off all of the what they call the not to exceed limits, where they can just charge me without asking me. The only ones I've kept on is emergency. Like if the heat goes out, and it's freezing, like I don't want the tenant freezing for 24 hours while I check my email or whatever.
And you don't want a pipe to break either. That's another
absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
So let me just address that. Let me tee that up for the listeners that may not know. Yeah. So I haven't said this in a while, listeners. So I'm glad, Sean, that you mentioned that. I've said it many times, but not lately. What have you done for me lately? Okay, so like that song. So look, in the property management agreement, you will generally have two types of expense clauses. One is a not to exceed amount for repairs where the property manager gets to make the judgment call. They get to make the decision without you being involved. And this could be written one of two ways, so be careful with this. It could be written on a per incident basis or a per month basis. Okay? So that's the first thing. Now, some of my property managers that I've had some difficulties with from time to time, I will tighten the reins on them. And I will say it's $100 per month discretionary or $200 per month discretionary, not per incident, per month. Okay? So I know that the biggest thing they can take out of my check every month is $100 or $200. Okay? And if they do, you demand a receipt from the actual vendor. Now, many of you have heard about the company that I'm suing in Kansas City, Missouri, Results Property Management. And I have been in litigation with these guys for a long time, and I have found many other victims as well. They basically set up this company that I've accused them, okay? Of course, they have their defense, which is, in my opinion, ridiculous, okay? But I've accused them of creating this company called Metro-Wide Billing that would just spit out invoices. And I'm like, what is Metro-Wide Billing? Okay, you know, that it has no employees, it has no staff, it has no nothing, right? It's a printer. You know, like the invoice, the point I'm making is the invoice has to be from the actual vendor that swung the hammer or the store that sold the refrigerator. They don't get to just print an invoice on their own letterhead or, you know, like this sort of what I call a shell company that says, this is the charge, okay? You know, someone actually did that work, or some store actually sold that widget that was used as a part. So you got to get an invoice from the actual vendor, not from the manager. That means when your property manager emails you and says, hey, we need to do this, we need to replace the air conditioning component, and it's $700, you say, well, $700 is an expensive repair. So I want to see at least 2 quotes, maybe 3, from actual vendors. And you're going to get a document, okay, or you're going to demand one that has the name of the company at the top, the phone number. You're going to go look online and check out their website and, you know, just know what's going on here. Now, look, folks, I know I'm sounding maybe overly suspicious here. Once you have a relationship and you verify that, you know, this is a legitimate property manager, and many of them are good. See, you don't hear me talk about the good ones. I only talk about the bad ones, okay? And that's, you know, we all have a bias toward negativity, I think, okay? So we're talking about problems and exceptions. There are good ones out there. So it's per incident or per month. There's a limit, and you can put it to 0 if you want. Okay, and just say, you know, for every repair, for any money you're going to spend, you got to email me and get my approval in advance. Okay, but the duty on you, the owner, is you have to respond quickly. You got to be available. Now, look, I've been to 81 countries. Everywhere I go on planet Earth, I have access to email, text, Voxer, the best thing ever. And so I'm always connected. So, you know, you just got to be connected and pay attention and respond quickly if you're going to make it 0, okay? Now, for emergencies, that's the other kind of discretion. The property manager does need to have discretion if there is water leaking, for example, so that they can act immediately and protect your interests, right? Go ahead, Sean. I just wanted people to understand that.
Absolutely. And that's a great distinction. And yeah, I've been dealing with that as well, with asking for itemized receipts from the vendor. And, you know, I just question everything. And so in this particular case, there were 2 separate repairs, both of them, you know, to spare you the details. One was air conditioning and one was plumbing. And both were close to $1,000. And I had my not to exceed switched off because these were not emergencies. You know, these were repairs. The tenants had called in and reported an issue. And of course, you know, I get notified. And I've had multiple instances with this manager where I didn't do this before, but I went back after the fact and questioned it. And they actually gave me a credit and investigated it and stopped a relationship with one of their vendors because I spoke up.
Yeah, good.
Because people, if it's a good company, like they'll want to help you out. The customer service is there. And that's what I found with these guys. But in this case, the repair, I got a quote for $968 to repair this leak in my heat pump. And unbeknownst to them, I used to work in the HVAC business when I was in high school. So
they didn't know who they're talking to.
Yeah, right. And I said, listen, this is not 5 hours of labor. And I see parts. It was a parts line item with no itemization. And so I questioned them on it, and they came back with something that was not really a great answer. And I did not approve the work order. I said, I'm having a second opinion. I have a handyman on standby, which helps. I do recommend, if you are going to do this, especially if you're moving towards self-management, I mean, relationships with somebody local is very helpful.
Yep.
And luckily I have one. And I said, hey, can you take a look at this? And sure enough, I got a quote for the same job for half of what I was being charged. And so they're going to go take care of it. And the tenant's happy, I'm happy, and on we go.
This will be continued on the next episode. Thank you for listening, and happy investing. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.